raised a really interesting question. So as I look back even to being governor, Southwest and South Side, there was a lot of persistent focus on Southwest and South Side for their high unemployment rates. And I would say, I used to tell even my economic development guys, by gosh, Southwest and South Side, which are, different. Southwest was a coal economy where we still mined as much coal as we did in the 1950s. We just do it with 1/10 the people because it's so mechanized. There was a real challenge there. And then the South Side challenge was largely kind of a NAFTA challenge when the textile furniture parts of the South Side economy changed so dramatically after NAFTA. Although it was interesting, the things that went to Mexico only stayed for about a year or two before they all went to China. I mean, so they didn't actually, NAFTA ended up not really being the problem. It was more Chinese competition. So I think you're right. When you say Martinsville or Danville, I think there has been more of a focus, and I'll put myself in that category when I was governor, thinking about because of the huge loss of manufacturing jobs in those communities, trying to backstop them. I will say this about Martinsville and Danville, and this could be now a good opportunity for the Allegheny Highlands. Danville was doing a little bit better than Martinsville because it was on US 29, which was more of an interstate quality road than Martinsville had. And what I always noticed about Martinsville and Danville, being 30 miles apart, they should have been cooperating instead they were always competing. If I went to Danville, I never heard anything good about Martinsville. I never heard anything good about Danville. But they were too close, really, to be competing. What they should have been doing is cooperating. The last time I went down to a Danville Chamber of Commerce meeting in January, and I was surprised that the speaker was talking about all these good things they were doing, and a lot of them were working together with Martinsville and Henry County. Then I was over the next day at the New College Institute in Martinsville, and they were talking about what they're doing well with Danville. So I think they're sort of getting their act together on the cooperation, and they're starting to get the sort of Greensboro effect with an aviation industry that's kind of popping up in Greensboro. They're starting to get some opportunities, both Martinsville and Danville, connected to that. What I'm saying is, and the next to do would be for me to talk to Maurice Jones, who is Governor McAuliffe's Secretary of Commerce. I think the ball is rolling on some Martinsville, Danville things in a way that was not the case 5 years ago, was not the case when I was governor. And something like that, once there's some momentum, it starts to pick up some support on its own, and you don't have to push it as much. So I think this would be a good opportunity for the Allegheny Highlands to say, just don't make it about South Side and Southwest. You're generally not west enough to be thought of as Southwest, and you're too north to be thought of as South Side. So there probably hasn't been the focus here. This area is a little bit like the Northern Neck, I would say. That the Northern Neck has some significant economic development needs. But people think about Fredericksburg, they think about Newport News, they think about Hampton Roads, they don't think about the Northern Neck, and there's some real significant economic development needs there. So I'll talk to Maurice and suggest that Maurice do what I'm going to try to get Matt to do, to pay some special attention. The other thing I will say, you mentioned that you work on Lexington, and I'm sure that that you do this, but any taking advantage of the Lexington community is always a good thing. Economic development projects or whatever, just because for now, I would say a key feature in the recruiting of any business is going to be what's going on at the community college and what's going on at the nearest four-year colleges, and kind of defining the region to kind of bring in that college community and what's happening there together with what's happening at Debbie Lancaster. That will be helpful. So for planning purposes, I'm sure you do that all anyway. But let me go back and mention to Maurice, who is a good friend, I've known Maurice for a long time, that as he's looking at his challenges as Secretary of Commerce with Governor McAuliffe, what happens, I'm living through this with my wife right now, when you get to be a cabinet secretary, you become a secretary in the middle of a legislative session. So your first 2 or 3 months is nothing but, standing at the plate trying to, hit the ball without the ball hitting you. But when you get done with the first legislative session, then what you do is everybody has been told by Governor McAuliffe, spend your next 3 months planning for what we'll do for the next 4 years. So we got through the session. They're still working on Medicaid expansion, obviously, but for those who aren't, the Health and Human Services, got Commerce and Education, they're now in a planning mode for what are we going to do for the next 4 years. It's a good time for Maurice because he's planning to try to figure out a way to get this on his radar screen. So I would encourage you to do
next town to south
Yep.
side.
Yep.
Just because, well, they have a need, but we have a need.
Yeah.
But they have incentive money, you know.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that tobacco commission is just such a difference maker. Yet it does, you know, there are pockets like Northern Neck,
Mhm.
like the Alleghenies, like the Page counties, who have
Yeah.
equal needs.
Yeah.
Who are equally affected by NAFTA.
Sure.
Yet we don't have the, and actually disadvantaged by the fact we're in this mountainous terrain.
Right.
Where it costs
Purpose
us,
of telecom and
it
everything.
costs us $100,000 an acre to prepare
Yeah.
an industrial site
To get some
because
flat,
we're dealing
right.
with mountainous terrain. But so the playing field is not level as it relates to rural economic
Well,
development.
you're right, you're right, the tobacco thing is actually right, and I didn't mention that, but that's true for the other reason. Not only were we steering, you know, when we settled, Virginia did something very smart. When we settled the national lawsuit over the cigarettes, most states just took the money and just plowed it into the budget. And frankly, a lot of states just frittered it away. Some states put the money at least into health, which, you know, that would be naturally, you know, that's what you ought to do. But Virginia took half the money, put it in the budget, put half the money, and put it into economic development for the tobacco regions of the state. So, you know, we're phasing out of tobacco quotas at the federal level. We've settled this big legislation, and we put half the money into economic development in Southside and Southwest, largely infrastructure, heavily telecom, broadband. And so which was all good in a way, because it actually produced more for Virginia than a lot of states used for monies. But what you find is the quirky thing, you can get better, you know, like broadband access, you know, in Tazewell than you can get in southern Albemarle County, or here, or the Northern Neck. And so it's good. I mean, we used it the right way, but we used it in a way that did benefit some regions compared to the others. So that's part of the answer, I think, to the Stephanie question. Why was it Martinsville, Danville? We did steer it, and they just started. The Tobacco Commission has done enough infrastructure now in those counties, and they're now starting to fund some projects outside of the traditional footprint. And that might be, you know, that might be an additional thing to contemplate. At the state legislature, working with the governor, even talking to Maurice about that.
I think sometimes communities that are really struggling and trying to do their best on their own are disadvantaged because
You
they...
think the self-help
Right,
will
because,
help?
yes, because they work on issues. It's kind of like, and I can remember from all the years that I've been in government, that money, for example, in law enforcement is focused on places where they have the highest crime.
Yeah, right.
But for communities that are really working at it and plowing their own way, they don't get that extra bump. And I think, candidly, the fact that they have such a high unemployment rate
Right.
in those communities is disadvantaging us because we're doing everything we can to try to make that unemployment rate as low as possible, but we're struggling with it. And so it does seem to me that there ought to be some other characteristics,
Right.
you know, that are looked at as you're trying to decide who you help next. And I'm a firm believer when there are lots of competing interests to go with the group or the people that are ready
Yeah.
to hit the ground. And I think we have a lot of things, as demonstrated by Mary's comments about the 2025, that we are not only ready to hit the ground, but we are hitting it as we can with limited resources.
Right.
But it seems to me with a little bit more resources, we could really make some headway and not be in the position that we're in. But on the other hand, holding your own in this kind of economy is difficult
Sure.
too. So.
In some
Bill-
reasons
oh,
why our,
please,
I'm sorry,
please.
in some reasons why our unemployment comes out of those areas is because people are left.
Yeah.
You know, that's why you see the decline in populations, but it really needs to be twofold, not only unemployment, but the population as well.
And it's funny, the same thing has happened in Southwest, where the population, as the coal jobs have dwindled because of machinery, the population has left. But in Southside, the population hasn't left. So the unemployment rate has spiked because people are reluctant to leave. So that, you know, I mean, we're a very diverse state. I mean, it's one of the fantastic things about Virginia. It's one of the best things about being in politics in Virginia. As you know, I have friends that are oystermen, I have friends that are bluegrass musicians, I have friends that are farmers, I have friends that are technology. Become vibrant. We
is self-defeating a little bit, darling. Maybe if you try to help yourself and don't sit around like a baby robin, maybe that's self-defeating. But I don't think so. I think we're doing the right thing. And I think one illustration of that is this 220 thing. Basically, this group is all together. Everybody agrees that completing that 4-lane from Eagle Rock onto I-64 is a very, very important thing for this community. Mills Gardner, when he was a Democrat, back in the 60s, he envisioned the arterial highway system. Good system. Makes sense to me. Made sense back in those days. And it pretty much followed the plan up to about 1990. And then it seemed to come to a screeching halt. And to be fair about it, I don't think we did as much as we could have after about that period of time. But we are together now, and I think we're on board. And there's a flame, and I'm trying to fan the flame. I'm not a big leader like these folks, but I'm fanning the flame all I can. I talked to Senator Deeds Monday, and he's trying to. He's going to call the Governor McCauley, and he's going to try to get McCauley up here. We're going to have this kind of meeting up here at this community college if we can get permission to do so. And we're going to keep on beating the drum and rah-rahing. We went to Richmond. A darn snowstorm came along. It was a blinding snowstorm. A few heroes made it down there, but they were at risk.
Yeah.
But we got down there, and Senator Deeds met with us, and Delegate Austin, newly elected, was there. And the first thing that Senator Deeds told me was, he said, I've talked to Secretary Lane, Secretary of Transportation, you know him, and he is, he's going to give us $150 million in the 6-year plan. Don't put this project in the 6-year plan. Then the governor came in, we had a meeting. Basically, Secretary Lane said the same thing. The governor said, he listened to us talk, we gave him our dog and pony show. And he said, I get it. He said, I understand, I get it. So I think we're all together.
What's the mileage from Eagle Rock to 64?
Roughly 10.
Oh,
About
15 miles.
So it's the Eagle Rock to Iron Gate to
Yeah.
Portage. It's like
And Iron Gate is a hang-up
Yeah.
because it's populated and it's narrow and you've got the gorge to go through. You know the road.
Yeah.
It's a heck of a dangerous
But
road.
the rest of it, you could do the 4-lane.
We could.
Yeah.
And my thought is, and I think we probably all agree on this, is get that 4-lane, run it right up to Iron Gate,
Yeah.
and in the meantime, try to figure out how to get through or around, or maybe you can't get through, maybe just stop and creep along till you get to the interstate. But we just need to get there. We got letters from the state police, from both the Salem district and the Stanton district, talking about the narrow bridges, the number of deaths, an inordinate number of deaths on that road. It's just bad, and it's just like, all roads lead to Rome, and the idea of the arterial highway system was you've got to connect your districts together. You've got to have the Covenant Allegheny, Cliffs and Boyd, Bath, the Homestead, the Greenbrier.
Yeah.
We're all on the same page. We've got to connect that with the Roanoke community. We've got I-64, which I think you came in on today.
I did.
Wish you'd come in on 220. We could.
I actually know the 220 pretty well. I've done enough canoeing on Craig Creek and on the Upper James that I know the 220 stretch pretty well.
Speaking of rivers, Gwen Mason and I go back a long time. She and I served on the Virginia Lamont College Board of Trustees together, but deeper than that. Her father and I, Dick Williams, fished together on the James River. But the records on that are sealed.
You have a place on the bull pasture?
We do, Highland County. We have to get you up there this summer.
Yeah, I love all the rivers here, cow pasture.
So I don't know what you can do to help us, but
Okay.
we're going to do the self-help. We're going to beat the drum and gather and do all we can.
Well, what I was going to suggest to Maurice is what you are already thinking about, getting the governor, getting Maurice, and getting the Aubrey, and maybe Ann too, getting them up here to talk about economic development issues together would be a really good thing.
We want him to ride the road. We want him to kick
Yeah.
those bridges a
Yeah.
little bit when he goes from there.
Right.
Just let him meet a truck and one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to
You
be.
can arrange a little trucking issue,
I'm I'm told by Rob Carey, who's the Salem regional guy, at the
Right. The combination information. What the community college system, if you look at state budgets, and look, I was governor in the worst recession since the 1930s. I'm the only governor who left office with a smaller budget than the one I started with. And it certainly wasn't anything I had on my bumper sticker that I hoped to accomplish. But that's, that's the way it was. But what the community colleges has seen is same state funding challenges that everybody has seen, but at a time of dramatically increasing need. So, more, in a tough economy, more people want to go back and get a new skill. At the same time, the per student state allocations and local allocations because of tough budgets, at the same time they're going down, your enrollment
That's right.
goes up. More people want new skills.
And the system's been really committed to re-engineering and looking at shared services. And we've just signed on with, one thing, I was really big into online learning, which wasn't really a presence here. Well, for us to do it ourselves, that's a pretty big infrastructure. Do it right or don't do it at all.
Yeah.
And so we signed on with the shared services for distance learning that Northern Virginia has had for 3 or 4 years and became the 18th school of the 23. So now we're downloading their courses, but they look and feel just like our courses, and it gives our students more options and more electives of pretty neat courses. If you want Chinese, basic Chinese, or Arabic, things that we would not have the population to actually deliver, but we would, so we're bringing some more creative and try to be innovative things that we can do it either regional, and we've worked with Virginia Weston and Blue Ridge, or is it statewide, such as this, this program with Northern Virginia. So.
Well, let me say, I wanted to say one thing about the governor's school, just my observation, and then maybe say a word of conclusion, and then thank everybody for coming. I'm mindful of folks' time, and I've got to give a talk at a little bit afternoon up at the Homestead. It's about 12:30. The governor's school is a real gem, and I didn't fully realize this until I got to be governor, but no state does what Virginia does. The governor's schools are unique to Virginia. And I'm kind of perennially proud because my father-in-law started them. Now, he started them in a different way. What he started called them governor's schools when he was governor in 1971, I think, was get the kids who are best and brightest and have them come to summer programs. So if you were really interested in foreign languages, that summer program would be at the University of Richmond. If you're really good in American history, that would be at Mary Baldwin. So he kind of started that as a summer program, and those still go on too.
Yeah, and we have. And we have, we host the summer governor's school program.
We have a summer regional governor's school in Gilda College here.
Right, that's right. That's right. So those are still strong, and they serve, I don't know, maybe about 5,000 kids a summer are in one of these programs around the state. But the fact that there are these 17, academic year governor schools in Virginia, 3 or 4 of which are full day, so Maggie Walker in Richmond, TJ in Northern Virginia, Appomattox and Petersburg, there might be one other, but most are like yours, half day in your school, half day in the governor's school. No other state has this. And I used to use it when I was governor doing economic development deals. I would make this part of my pitch. Let me tell you about the K-12 system we have. And so to pitch somebody to come to, it's easy to pitch a company to come to Northern Virginia and be near Dulles Airport, and if you're a technology company and you're trying to do government contracts, well, that's not a hard sell. But to try to convince people to look outside the main metro areas, to pitch this governor's school, so public schools are good generally in Virginia compared to national averages, and every jurisdiction is in a network of one of these governor's schools. That ended up being a really good marketing tool. So I would just encourage you as part of your economic development thinking to always market these governor's schools, because nobody else does it. Is it some, like North Carolina, has a school for the arts. They'll have one regional magnet school, just one, but nobody has these governor schools that cover every last part of the state. And I know it's hard. I know it's hard for local governments to come up with the allocation and pay it to the governor's school when the school budgets themselves are so stressed. But keeping a vibrant government school does have an economic development value.
In the short time I've been here, I've continued to hear how important the STEM-related governor's school.
Yeah.
But there's
over the years in being in downtown Clifton Forge. I mean, it seems like that is one of the cool things that's going on.
And I think that is the resurgence that has really put us back on the map, is just people walking through and saying, hey, this is a cool town.
Yeah.
And you got something going that not everybody has, you know, and there's no, you know, ginormous stores and Home Depots in your backyard, you know, this is fun mom and pop
Yeah,
stuff.
mom and pop.
And you need to mention the fact that we're trying to get the Amtrak passenger station moved in our town to the new Heritage Center. I've been working over 2 years between CSX and the Amtrak officials to do that. We currently have 3 days a week service. We've been given an indication by Amtrak that if we can get that station moved, we may get more days of the week service, which would really be a boon to our tourism activity, because right now people have to plan trips based upon leaving on a certain day and coming back on a certain day, since the service is only available 3 days a week.
What is, who makes that decision?
It's
Getting the station moved?
It's a joint decision between CSX and Amtrak, because currently Amtrak has perpetual rights to the location at the administrative building in the downtown, which is a dingy, dark place that I wouldn't recommend to anybody.
That's a train stop.
Very welcoming,
The
for
the
sure.
real issue is in moving the station, making sure that Amtrak continues to have perpetual access to the rail, because as you well know, the rail usage by these larger corporations, CSX and Norfolk Southern, is so dramatic themselves that passenger service often goes to the 5-track in order to make these other things happen.
That's the American challenge.
Yes, and we think we're close to getting that approval that will then require us as a community to build a concourse to go along with the other amenities there. But if there's anything that you, Senator, can do to kind of push that along, because I'm getting tired of pushing.
Yeah. I've been going to meetings for 25 years, and I've never sat down one where there was a person. Green Power West.
Yeah,
Every
interesting. Yeah.
And if you look at the big scale of it, the ones of us that are held back the most, I mean, you can start Highland, Bath, Allegheny Creek, right on, we're the outside of the rim.
Yeah.
And the very system that we use of states, it's terrible trying to work across state line and work with somebody else. I'd be curious if some of your contacts in the Senate, I mean, I'm sure you know the senators from the state.
I know Joe Manchin very, very well.
See if they have the same problem in the state of West Virginia. It's on the outside of their realm. And somehow we need to break that. I mean, they've got a lot going on, medical school stuff in Lewisburg. We could easily spring part of it together.
That's a
But the
smart
very
idea.
system of our 2 states won't allow us to do it. We can't work with that.
Joe and I did it when we were governors. We did an economic development thing one day in Bluefield on both sides of the line. And they said it was the first time that the 2 governors had done an event together in Bluefield since 1935. This is in 2006.
Somehow we need to break that realm effect that, and I think it's not just us in Virginia, it's probably other states too, that we have this ring. We can only, we border Greenbrier County as much as we
Yeah.
can, Nevada type property is, and it's closer from here to Lewisburg than it is to Roanoke. But we
Well,
never-
and you know, the other
we
thing
never
that
invite them
you
to
guys
meet
have
us.
always had too is that the Homestead and Greenbrier have always been competitors, and that might have built up a little bit of a, competition thing. But it was the same way between Danville, Martinsville, and Greensboro, that we never did anything, never, with the North Carolina guys across the border. But what's happened is, when it was interesting, we were talking earlier about the EDA gave some money to Rolls-Royce. When Rolls-Royce came to Virginia, it started to build up an aviation presence in Virginia. Well, Greensboro is going to be a big aviation community. And now Martinsville and Danville are attracting some suppliers and component manufacturers that can serve, either Rolls-Royce up in Prince George or the Greensboro. So there are some things, but why don't I talk to Joe and see if what he thinks about that, and maybe there are some things we can think about, even doing the 2 of us to help that a little bit.
Before I get out of politics, I'd like to attend one meeting where there was somebody from Greenbrier.
Yeah. What a great bill. What a great.
Lofty goals,
Yeah,
Bennett,
that's a
lofty
great
goals.
Well, it does, and I think in a way, it does hold us back.
Probably, yeah, they probably are helping back too.
We can't partner going that way,
Yeah.
we only partner going this way.
Yeah, that's a good point. Listen, this has been really helpful for me. A lot, as I say, if I come for an hour and a half, it's not like I'm an expert, but I sure learn a lot more in an hour and a half sitting here at the community college and talking to people face to face than I would learn from reading a briefing book where everything that was said here would be in the briefing book. This is very, very helpful. We come back with a couple of to-dos, so we'll reach out to the EDA, we'll reach out to Maurice Jones, the Secretary of Commerce, and encourage some economic development focus here.
Maybe a letter to Amtrak, CSX, or
Yeah.
phone calls?
Yeah, I would say phone calls to those guys because I deal with Amtrak all the time, and Amtrak's pretty happy with Virginia. We tried to get them to do that extra line from DC to Lynchburg, eventually, hopefully, to Roanoke and Bristol, and they were like, well, it's not going to work. You're going to have to put in some money. We don't think the ridership's going to be very good. We put in the money, and the ridership was not only good, it was one of the most profitable lines they had, and now on their instance, they're saying, we want to go to Roanoke. And we want to go to Blacksburg, then we want to go to Bristol. So Amtrak's pretty happy with us. They've extended service to Norfolk. We had service to Newport News, but now they're going south of the Jamestown to Norfolk. They've been happy with that. So we have good relations with them. So I'd like to make calls on, and you can give us the right contact, especially the right contact person at CSX, so I can make that call. We would love to be helpful on that. Yeah. Oh, absolutely, Charlotte. I said I was going to come to Charlotte right after tomorrow.
I just wanted to just, can't leave here without talking about healthcare. And
Yeah.
everything that's been
Yeah.
discussed around economic development is part of what's going to help healthcare stay in the community and thrive in the community. It's only been 6 or 7 years ago that the hospital was very, very busy, had a very robust surgery program, et cetera. We've lost a lot of doctors. We need to attract doctors back to the community, and everything we talked about today is what will support that happening. I know you don't have time to go into it today, but at some point, I think it's important for us to talk about Medicaid expansion.
Yeah.
What your thoughts are.
Sure, I can do it today.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
You want me to do that or anything else too?
I think that's an important thing right now.
Yeah. We really should do the Medicaid expansion. I believe in it so strongly, and I wrote a piece that was in the Roanoke paper, I think it was maybe Sunday or Monday. Sunday. The economic impact of 400,000 more people in the state having health insurance would be very, very positive. From an employment standpoint, these are overwhelmingly working people and their kids. So a worker that's got the security of health coverage is a more productive, more reliable worker. And then there's just the human anxiety that's lifted from your shoulders if you're not worried about what's going to happen to you if you get in an accident or one of your kids get sick. But the issue is also the fate of our hospitals. The Medicaid expansion, well, one hospital in Virginia has already closed, a hospital in Lee County that said we would be open in Virginia and accepted the Medicaid expansion. And that's in one of the most underserved parts of the state, down in the southwest corner, where the nearest hospital would probably be driving over into Bristol, which is not a fast drive. So I would suspect, in terms of your bottom line in Medicaid, what percentage of your patients are Medicaid right now?
Probably 8 to 10.
And then there would be a chunk of folks who are, they're
They don't have anything in
uncollectible,
them, exactly.
and that's a big chunk. But you're required to serve them.
Uncompensated care.
You're required to serve them if they show up with an emergency need. And if they could be covered and have Medicaid, it would be enormously beneficial. Medicaid expansion is more beneficial to rural hospitals than any other hospitals, and will keep hospitals thriving. And so I'm very helpful to learn, and thank you, and everybody have a great weekend. I'll look forward to seeing you.
Thank you.